I don't know if you've noticed, but there's been quite a bit of censoring going on social media platforms lately. Have you noticed this? Really troubling news over at the Twitterverse, one of the biggest social media sites, and Facebook. We'll get to Facebook in a second, but first I want to talk about Twitter. So Twitter has been partnering with Reuters, and as the Gray Zone reports, this is really troubling. So Twitter has been partnering with the UK government-backed CIA-linked Reuters to censor alternative views. Social media giant Twitter has announced that it will work with Reuters and the Associated Press to censor supposed misinformation on the platform, while actively promoting news stories that they deem to be credible. Okay. Both of these media outlets are reliable mouthpieces of Western governments. But Reuters takes the cozy relationship a step further. Because I don't know if you remember or you are informed about Reuters or not. This is why you're not going to see this in the mainstream media talked about. But we will talk about it here because we are not the mainstream media. During the first Cold War, Reuters was funded by the British government. Why? The whole point of Reuters was to spread anti-Soviet propaganda and to disseminate misinformation that served UK foreign policy interests in the Middle East and Latin America. Oh, yes, it's true. So Twitter is going to censor things that they deem are misinformation. They're going to team up with a disinformation news agency to tell us what is misinformation on Twitter. So Max Blumenthal had tweeted about this. Max Blumenthal, a great reporter, tweeted this. Remember the time Twitter slapped a warning label on my factual article exposing Reuters as a British intelligence contractor conducting information warfare ops against Russia? And look at this. Twitter slaps this Twitter safety warning on here. We're excited to announce a new collaboration with the AP and Reuters. Conversations move fast on Twitter, and we need to be able to surface credible context as quickly as possible. Learn more.
So I don't know if you know who Brett Weinstein is, but he's been pretty vocal about the vaccines and everything during the pandemic. And as you know, well, we're still on Twitter. You're going to get to YouTube, right? We can finish Twitter if you're going to get to YouTube.
Yeah. Well, I was going to talk. Yeah, Facebook, Twitter, and I didn't have a YouTube story today, but it just so happens. Yeah, but go ahead.
It actually affects all three because all of them, if you talk about the pandemic, they all cite the CDC and everything. Like if you want up-to-date information, go to the CDC. That's where you get your information. But Brett Weinstein was calling out the CDC and the WHO who were wrong with what they were saying. And he ended up being right. But his videos were taken down and the CDC information is still up, even though he was correct and the CDC was wrong. So like what, if that's going to be the case ongoing, then what are we supposed to do about that?
Exactly. That's the problem though, right? So we hold websites that are awful, like Wikipedia, up as like this standard. Like, oh, I went to Wikipedia. Really? Which is run by billionaire oligarchs, right? Like, I mean, Wikipedia is an absolute joke. So we hold these big sites up that they're somehow, or like we got to trust the CDC website, right? Got to trust that. We got to trust Reuters because clearly that's a mainstream news organization. You know, I got an Amazon. I got one of those Echo shows. You know, that you set it up on the Alexa thing, and I was setting it up because I wanted to be able to show like pictures of the kids. You know, like a little photo frame thing, and it's like. All you need to do is ask blah 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 to ask your Echo to get news from trusted sources, right? And the first thing it gives me is CNN. I'm like, really? So who deems these as credible sources?
Well, that's what I always laugh when you download these apps, like the Apple News app, or YouTube is like, we're gonna show more relevant sources and stuff, and it's all the Fox, MSNBC. I mean. MSNBC for a year straight, Rachel Maddow did Alex Jones level Russia propaganda, and she's still up. But somebody that goes against her and says that it's not true, they can get taken down. It makes zero sense why and all it boils down to is that's the big money. They have the big money.
Follow the money, always, right? Follow the money. They don't want, follow the money. So that's what Twitter's doing. They're following the money right here to Reuters. I love that. So Max Blumenthal reveals through his reporting how Reuters is a media company that participated in disinformation. So he reveals this in an article, which is a factual article, and then Twitter puts a warning label on it that calls it fake, basically. Twitter is telling us that this story is fake, even though it's true, and putting a warning label on it.
Like they always say, who's going to watch The Watchmen?
Yeah. Oh, no, I tell you who's going to watch The Watchmen. It's like members of the military who like Facebook is hiring, like to make sure that we're not spreading misinformation about the military. We're hiring former CIA members and things like that. Like that's who we hire as watchdogs now to protect us. Like we're fact checking things with these people. Okay.
Well, and they were even proposing fact checking our text messages.
Yeah. Oh, and exactly. And oh, by the way, the Associated Press, I forgot to even bag on them. The AP is also close to Western governments, boasting a long history of echoing their dubious talking points. The Newswire published numerous articles in the lead up to the U.S. invasion of Iraq, falsely claiming that Saddam Hussein had weapons of mass destruction. It also ran fake news stories on supposed Kuwaiti babies being removed from incubators by Iraqi soldiers so that we could swoop in and go to war. Great. So, don't you have a responsibility to tell us that it's propaganda? Like as Ben Norton says, Twitter announced it's going to work with Reuters to censor so-called disinformation. What, of course, it didn't mention is Reuters is a propaganda outlet. Okay. So Twitter now, the thing is people say Twitter's small. It's not. It really is almost like a public utility in many ways. In what way can you get out information that quickly? I know from to me, like it's become it's become an incredibly important news gathering source as well. I remember during the Arab Spring, when I was on the air and anchoring the news, like one of the ways we were able to get information directly from the people that were involved in the uprisings was through Twitter. Like getting videos right from the ground, right in the center squares where these uprisings were happening. And the mainstream media was scrambling to try to cover it. So Twitter provided an incredible resource for people to get like information out there quickly. And now Twitter is going to tell us what it deems to be agreeable content or not. They're going to make sure that we get our only opinions right from the Reuters sources. Thank you. Like going great lengths to censor these voices that they don't like. So Twitter and now Facebook. So Facebook, this story is amazing. We covered this in the newsletter this morning. Researchers who study Facebook political ads, they're doing research on seeing how they basically favor one party or the other or spread disinformation on Facebook. They were banned from Facebook for doing research on Facebook. The research study, they study the origin and the spread of political ads. And Facebook says that they violate its terms of service by scraping user data without permission. Well, how do they do it? They weren't violating anything. Because they do it with a browser plugin that users have to voluntarily download. And then it collects data from people who have the plugin installed on purpose, as well as people they engage with. So Facebook says, this is a violation because it's collecting from people who did not install or consent to the collection. But yes, they did, because through the plugin, you have to opt into this. Who seeks out a plugin that's opting into the research?
Well, and a lot of people don't realize, like, remember those, like, which Disney princess are you? Any of you that take those? If you take the what Disney princess are you, or what actor do you look like? What's your doppelganger? Anytime you guys do any of those things, that you are giving another company your data that they can run against, and they can see you, they can see your friends, they can see everything. So no, don't do that stuff. But it's kind of the same thing. You have to give those things permission in order for them to get access to that information.
Yeah, and the way that those ads were being run was exactly that way. That was back during the Trump rise, Trump rise office, which was like, what do you like better, or do you think that Hillary Clinton or this or that or whatever? And that's how they were able to figure you out, and that was how the game was played back then. What was the name of that movie? was it called? There was a really good movie about this.
Who was in it?
Was it Benedict Cumberbatch is in it? No. Yeah, well, it was focused though on the Brexit side of things. So I think it was actually called Brexit with Benedict Cumberbatch, and they talk about how they did this on Facebook and did they replicated the exact same Brexit play for the Trump presidency on Facebook.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
It's really good. Yeah, it's really good. Anyway, basically, through this plugin, the researchers and journalists have been able to identify undisclosed support for political ads and other important trends. The researchers also say that Facebook does not welcome the scrutiny, and that's why they were banned. Yeah. In totally related news to this, though, here's the hypocrisy of Facebook. In related news, a UK research firm found that Facebook allowed oil and gas companies to advertise its agenda contrary to its company's own environmental policies, right in the terms of service. According to The Guardian, the report found that 25 oil and gas industry organizations spent at least $9.5 million to place more than 25,000 ads on Facebook's U.S. platforms last year. And guess what? They were seen hundreds of millions of times. Hundreds of millions of times. So they're okay to take money, even though it's a violation of their own terms of service. Even though they say in their terms of service, we can't run these things that are counter to our environmental policies, et cetera. But we'll take your money. But if you want to study us to see how misinformation gets spread on our platform, then no, you can't do that, even though it's not a violation because people opted into it. So these are the big companies that continue to censor these voices. We're seeing it on YouTube, we're seeing it on Facebook, we're seeing it on Twitter. It's all big money, and it's all really scary. Some of my tech friends, I've mentioned this before, but have said, it's good that we censor these people. Like, you got to stop this speech. We got to stop this stuff. It's okay until suddenly someone, on the left starts getting censored.
Yeah.
And then, wow, they don't stop. They don't just stop with the pro-Trump stuff. They don't stop there. You mean they also want to go?
That's why I'm a free speech purist. I mean, I think that we need to have, because that's the only way conversations are ever going to take place. You're going to have some fake information out of there, and you got to just learn to weed through it. But it's like Parler. Any app that comes along that tries to give you that, the big companies took down because they had like 60 posts that were questionable, like calling for violence or whatever. But there was way more stuff on Facebook and Twitter calling for violence from like Antifa and stuff like that than there was on Parler. But they didn't like the fact that Parler was a free speech platform because there's information that they can't censor on there. They don't want you to get information that that doesn't go through them first. And right. By them, I mean the fact checkers.
And that's why I'm so excited about these decentralized blockchain networks that, like last night I did a video that, really took off, and talking about, like, I had a whole interview with a team that's built an amazing, like, decentralized blockchain. And, so it's not behind any kind of a paywall. It's not going, where everyone could have access to it, and no state, no billionaire media company would control it. You have the code up on GitHub and let people build on it. The same way that we build code, the same way that people improve upon Markdown, or the same way that people improve upon Python scripting, or other kinds of computer code, like Swift programming language, right? Make it open source, make it available. And that's maybe the only way we're going to get around this. I don't know. If you guys have any solutions, let me know in the chat. I'd love to hear it. So that's my take on censoring voices. Thanks for subscribing to the channel. You can also become a channel member by going to morninginvest.com/join, where you can stick it to the mainstream media and support independent journalism. We're able to bring you the stories that you won't see on any of the major billionaire-backed networks. Thanks so much. We'll see you next time, everyone.